I know. Another video where someone says, well, I realized that I was wrong about blah, 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 blah. But in this particular case, I'm really excited to be wrong about my original feelings towards One Piece. I was nervous to start reading One Piece because I know it's a massive undertaking. When I first read it, when the season 1 of the Netflix show came out, I felt like it was going to be, fun. And then I ended up kind of getting annoyed by Luffy, and I felt like I didn't fully understand it, and I don't know, it didn't click. It didn't click with me at all. And I think over the course of the last, year since starting to read Attack on Titan, Full Metal Alchemist, Demon Slayer, starting Death Note, watching anime like Violet Evergarden and Frieren, and all these different anime that you can watch with me on patreon.com/MarcoMeatball, I've started to realize One Piece is one of these things that if you're a fan of the medium, that you kind of need to start to explore. And after many, many, many recommendations, I sat down with it. I started it over, and I was incredibly, incredibly wrong. One Piece is a story full of heart and soul. It's light and heavy all at the same time. Luffy, not annoying at all. Luffy, to me, represents the indomitable spirit of what's possible when you set aside pessimism and negativity, which ironically often is showcased by his shipmates. They're usually telling him, Luffy, no, what are you doing? But Luffy doesn't get weighed down by that. Luffy stands up on his 2 feet, puts his arms against his side, and says, the thing that we're thinking or the thing that we are afraid to say. Luffy says it. Luffy's spirit is so beautiful, so empowering, so encouraging. I can't help but feel like life is better because I'm reading One Piece and experiencing Luffy. One of the most beautiful things about Luffy that I especially found, well, there's 2 instances. One in the boat. Forgive me with names and stuff. I can't remember anything anymore. And when he's underwater at Arlong Park, he's being looked after. He's being tended to. For all intents and purposes, this is the end of the road for this ragtag group of heroes. And then instead of being like mortified that he basically was dead and dying, as Luffy awakens, he springs into action. Arlong was not necessarily my favorite villain of the first arc. I've read about 110-ish chapters of One Piece at this point. It wasn't necessarily my favorite. I much preferred Buggy the Clown, and I really loved everything that happened on the boat. And there too, we had Luffy, who was strong and focused and determined and unrelenting. That arc with Zolo too was really something, and it's amazing to see how that actually is fueling Zolo now. I'm so impressed by Luffy's willingness to never give up, and he never surrenders. He may doubt sometimes, but his conviction to his goal and his conviction to like his life and his friends and colleagues and kindness to strangers is beautiful. And I think it's such an inspiring thing to read at whatever age. It's funny because there was another part that really kind of caught me off guard. Again, all this Arlong Park stuff really hits. I love every time I get to see Zolo be a badass. And Zolo's another example. Doesn't matter how many times Zolo's stabbed, he's literally bleeding out, stabbed in the side of the stomach. It doesn't matter. He still continues to fight. He never, ever gives up. But I love the difference between Zolo and Luffy. Where Luffy's got that innocence, Zolo has that darkness. Zolo has that anguish in him, that sadness. He's fueled by that, that feeling of frustration or the feeling of like owing a responsibility. The weight of that responsibility is palpable. Usopp, the boy who cried wolf. But then when it comes time to get to Arlong Park, he instead of choosing to run away, he faces the truth head on and commits to being courageous. Frankly, Nami at first, I didn't care for Nami at first, and I know that's very contentious, but Nami at first Nami's tough because she's so cold and she's so guarded and shielded, which is totally reasonable given what's happened to her in her life. But when you meet Nami, you can't help but feel that she's very selfish for a very good reason, right? To protect her people, to protect her home after everything she's experienced. And yet Nami's come to grow on me too. All these characters, Sanji as well. Sanji hasn't really lost that sense of debonair elegance that he carries with himself. And even though he's tough, he has this flair about him that I find so enjoyable. And all of these characters have just been a joy. honestly a joy. I really do believe, and I've heard this said before, but One Piece really does have some of the best villains in like maybe all of manga. I don't know, that's a big statement, but man, every time they introduce, it reminds me a lot of how much I love villains in Spider-Man or Batman. These villains are so unique. I love the devil fruit aspects of this, and I love, I just all of it. I mean, it's like so good. The part that I've recently stopped at is the whale. You know, they enter inside the whale. Luffy encourages the whale as it bangs its head against that wall to break through, to go back to those people, to those pirates that it's been waiting for. And I thought that was so beautiful and honestly touching and melancholic and sad. And yet even through that, Luffy says, now you have another reason to wait. Now you still have a purpose. Now you'll wait for me and I will come back. Excellent stuff. I'm looking forward to updating you in another 100 chapters as I continue on my probably year-long journey to read One Piece. But boy, I gotta say, like, it's just such a treat. It's just such a treat to read such good storytelling and read such good stories. Discovering manga and discovering anime is absolutely one of the highlights of my life. If you want to check out anime episodes, you can check those out on Patreon. By the time this comes out, we may be finishing up Mob Psycho and moving on to something else. But yeah, I've just been loving this journey, and thank you for coming along with it. If you're new here, hi, my name is Marco. I love talking about video game music and anime music from an emotional perspective, but also I love reading manga. It's been a delight. See ya.